Here's a segment from the latest edition of St. Charles Parish Today, a monthly local talk show.
It's no secret that drainage and flood protection are a priority for our local administration. But if you've ever seen the bill for our levee project, then you know we simply can't afford to do it alone. Our parish officials travel to Baton Rouge and Washington, D.C. each year to lobby with our delegations to gather funding, support, and raise awareness for our levee projects. And in the fight for affordable flood insurance, some progress has been made. Here with me today to give us an update is St. Charles Parish President Larry Cochran and U.S. Congressman for the Louisiana 6th District, Garret Graves. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for always coming on to support us. You're actually the first federal official we've had on this show, so it's kind of exciting.
Can we get a coffee mug?
Well, we'll budget for that. We'll budget for that. So with that being said, we're going to use the majority of the time today to talk about issues that are real important to us in this area. And that is, of course, flood protection and levee protection and also flood insurance. So with that, I just played the newest and latest levee update on the West Bank Hurricane Protection Levee. And just tell me, how does it feel to see the progress that's been made? And would you say that St. Charles Parish is a good investment?
Look, when you sit there and look at all these plans and reports and you talk about all the Corps of Engineer bureaucracy, it gets infuriating. But whenever you have a parish that has a strong desire to move forward and improve the protection for constituents, for citizens in the parish, when they understand that time is money, when they understand that every single hurricane season is potentially Russian roulette, you see the type of progress that we've seen here in the last few years. It is fantastic because this isn't just moving dirt, moving bulldozers. This is really bringing protection to people's investments in their homes and their businesses, to where when we have another storm, we have another hurricane, it's another rainy day, not devastation.
Absolutely. I mean, you would say the same thing, Larry.
Absolutely.
Just seeing the continued construction is...
Well, I mean, the residents of the parish have put their money where their mouths are, and we've been screaming for hurricane protection, and we passed a tax, and we've been matching dollar for dollar, which y'all help, CPRA's help, and we're moving forward.
I'm glad you touched upon that. Before you served as our federal congressman, you actually served as the chairman of the Coastal Restoration and Protection Authority of Louisiana, and you actually helped us procure some money. And since then, even after you helped us procure the money, you've come back and visited the project since. How has your personal experience with our levee project helped you in your fight in D.C.?
Well, look, there are literally billions of dollars in levee projects around South Louisiana. Many of those have been advanced with federal funds, but unfortunately, a lot of the projects that are being built and finished today, these projects date back to the 1960s and 1970s. I mean, you can't make this stuff up in regard to the amount of time it takes, the amount of money that it takes. And so seeing a parish step up like this, seeing the progress that's been made here, what it does is it gives us something to take back to Washington and say, look, you're right, we could continue spending all this money in the Corps of Engineers process, and maybe in 2050 we'll have a levee in St. Charles Parish. Or we can make investments in the parish where we're seeing it happen faster, we're getting better bang for the buck, and there's this misconception out there, and this is something we've taken back to Washington. There's this misconception that if you come in and you fund these types of projects, that's irresponsible spending and you're increasing the debt and things like that. There's a lack of recognition that spending this kind of money saves exponentially more dollars down the road and preventing the devastation and lowering flood insurance rates and other important objectives.
Right, and as Larry mentioned, we passed a millage to even help with that. You know, we didn't want to start from zero. So with that being said, Larry, members of the council and yourself travel to D.C. pretty frequently to keep up with our federal officials. How important are those relationships?
Early on, I actually thought it was a waste of time because we go up there and we had all these projects we'd lay out, and then we started figuring out, with your help and other people's help, if you go up there with a plan on everything, you form partnerships. And that's what I've seen happen over the years in D.C. CPRA has been a great partner of St. Charles Parish. You know, under your leadership, they came into a different leadership, and they've been really proactive on guiding us. And that's why we've moved so quickly. I mean, we've really, in the last 2.5 years, we've come a long way with levee. And it was under the guidance of people like yourself, Garret, and CPRA, quite frankly. And we've come with leaps and bounds how far this levee has grown, you know, and I can see an end to it. I really can, you know, but it's all going to be maintenance and lifting in the future. But right now, every dollar we have is going toward the levee.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, something that's important when St. Charles Parish comes and they do share a plan, share a vision, we're able to look at the return on investment, the benefits from those projects. It helps us to be able to seek dollars and get dollars in Washington to send back down. Just for example, just within the last year, we've probably sent about $1 billion in extra federal funds down here for flood protection, hazard mitigation type investments, including just $600 million about 2 weeks ago.
With that, Larry, I believe you have a list of projects that we're actually advocating for in DC. Can you go over some of those?
Right now, we got, from the Restore Act, we got $3 million total with the Parity Canal Gate, which is big. You know, that was a big unknown coming into the presidency with the administration, and that's been secured. DOTD has committed $5.6 million in the Ellington, which we're letting, I think at the next council meeting, I believe. And CPRA has proposed $3.5 million in Go Mesa funding for the Magnolia Ridge lift. And then on the East Bank, we are still lobbying DC for the West Shore project. You know, this Friday we have a meeting with St. John officials to start getting that moving in the right direction up there.
Absolutely. All right, well now it's time to talk about not such a happy topic. Flood insurance. In January of 2014, Congress passed the Homeowner Flood Insurance Affordability Act, or as we know it, the HFIAA. And that delayed some of those astronomical rates that we were going to see had that not passed. And the last time we discussed flood insurance on this show was roughly a year ago, and I believe at that time we were looking at the renewal of the National Flood Insurance Program and where that was going to be. Can you give us the latest? What is the status? What are our rates looking like?
Sure.
As much as you can.
Yeah. You know, Louisiana's in a unique position in regard to the National Flood Insurance Program. There are a lot of repetitive loss properties, and certainly in many instances, it makes more sense to buy out a property or to find a way to provide better protection for that home or business than it does to continue paying premiums. There's a property that has been flooded 40 times in Louisiana, literally. Well, in fact, it's over 40 times that has been
It's not
paid.
St. Charles Parish, correct?
No, it's not. It's been paid over and over again. And so the thing that's unique about Louisiana, though, is that we really are more vulnerable to flooding. But we're more vulnerable to flooding largely because of what's happened to our coast. The coast has consumed, the Gulf of Mexico has consumed 2,000 square miles of our coast. Yeah. It is that much closer. It has encroached upon our homes and businesses. We haven't moved to the disaster, which is what's happened in other states. They've built in places they shouldn't have built. To a large degree, the problem here, the vulnerability has moved to us. Now, you can imagine a scenario where your next door neighbor did something that diverted a canal and all of a sudden the water's channeled through your front door. That's going to be their fault and they're going to be responsible for that. Yet in the case of Louisiana, the federal government, our own Army Corps of Engineers, is largely to blame for the coastal land loss, for making us more vulnerable, but that same federal government under the insurance program is trying to charge us more for it. So your neighbor wouldn't come in and flood your house and make you pay for it. Mm-hmm. But in this case, that's exactly what's happening. There was a bill that passed through the House last year that tried to update the flood insurance program. I believe it was unfair to Louisiana. It was going to increase the flood insurance premiums to $10,000 a year in some instances. Look, you have X amount of dollars to pay your mortgage, to pay your insurance, and do everything else. That's too much. It consumes too much of your budget, and that number was actually going to increase with inflation on an annual basis. So the current program is authorized through March 23rd of 2018. We're working on a fair path forward that importantly includes looking at areas that are vulnerable and prioritizing those areas for flood protection and hurricane protection instead of just increasing these exorbitant flood insurance rates. Let's make these areas more resilient. Let's flood-proof these areas instead of just charging them outrageous rates.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And so on to another topic, tax reform. What's going on with that?
Well, look, the good news is that in the state's budget problems, you have seen economists come out and estimate that the state of Louisiana, their budget problem will be filled in, the gap will be filled in to the tune of perhaps $200 million as a result of the federal tax reduction. So approximately $3.2 trillion in tax reductions to citizens. What does that mean for a family of four earning $75,000? That means their tax bill is cut in half. One of the important components of the tax bill that I'm excited about is that it reduces our tax rates in a way that makes us a more competitive place to have a business when you look across the United States, look across the world. Our tax rate in the United States was triple the corporate tax rate in some countries. It makes it really easy to say, you know what, I'm moving to Ireland. I'm moving to some other country in Asia or in South America where I can pay a fraction of the tax rate we pay in the United States. So what are we seeing? We're seeing companies move here, and we're seeing companies bring dollars here. Perfect example. Apple is bringing back $350 billion. One company bringing back $350 billion they're going to be investing in the United States. That one payment is going to bring an additional $35 billion in tax payments to the U.S. Treasury that were not anticipated. Those kinds of wins at the national level, locally, Gulf South Bank increasing their minimum wage to $12 an hour, increasing their corporate giving, raising wages and bonuses for employees. Those are big wins right here at home, demonstrating that this is really puts the United States back on the map and improves our competitiveness around the globe.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so moving along. Larry, what would be the one message we want to get to D.C. via Garret?
Send me money. No. No, the one message to Garret is the relationship we have is great. What you're doing for St. Charles Parish, you know, you don't get the kudos you should get, Garret. You've been around for a long time. You've been a great advocate for St. Charles Parish. So with that, thank you from the people of the parish. But on the levee protection side, we need to figure out how we can build levees cheaper. If there's a way, and also the permitting processes we talked about. You know, if we could streamline that, get that where it's a little bit more affordable, that would help the people of St. Charles Parish tremendously. And then this West Shore project, we need to fast track this some kind of a way because, and I'm not just advocating for St. Charles Parish, it's going to help St. John and all the way up the river.
Oh,
you know, St. John, St. James, and you know, them parish presidents up there. I'd be remiss if that, you know, not to say that they would be very, very appreciative, but I'd be appreciative because we'd covered a little town of Months, just, you know, west of the spillway. And as I said earlier, we're going to have a meeting this week to try to get that going. So if any help you can do with that would be much appreciated.
Governor and I are meeting on Friday, and we're going to be talking about it. So we actually have some ideas on how we can make progress in that. You know, this is a perfect example of where you have complete dysfunction within the federal government. I mean, this project, you can't make this up. 42 years in the study phase. 42
West Shore?
years, the West Shore Hurricane Protection Project. I mean, think about for just a minute, if you went to any type of client and said, yes, I will respond to you, give me 42 years and I'll have and this isn't the project being built, this is just coming back and finishing your study. Telling your teacher, I'm gonna have your book report for you, I'm gonna have your research paper in 42 years. I mean, you're gonna be kicked out, and you should. It is absolutely unacceptable. And so some of the efforts right now with the President's infrastructure package, we're working on it now in Washington, improving the permitting process, increasing the efficiency of how we can build these projects. We're spending tens of millions of dollars, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars, before we even put a shovel in the ground. It is outrageous just over to our west right now. $80 million spent on studying a project without turning a single morsel of dirt in Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes. Those types of examples are unacceptable. We can no longer allow that to happen. And I think one of the big parts of the solution, as the parish has demonstrated here, is giving them the money in many cases, letting them lead. You know where your vulnerabilities are. You know how to build these projects. They can do it faster. They can do it cheaper. I think it's a big part of the long-term solution.
Oh, definitely. And West Shore has been an ongoing thing in this parish. And as you pointed out, for us, it's just months, but honestly, the levee goes further than that and it covers other parishes. So.
Well, as we move forward, we're always talking about lifts. Right now, they're lifting it. You know, they're just completing another lift right now out there. And, you know, we keep talking about the west bank of the parish. The east bank of the parish is just as important. But moving forward, the east bank is always going to be lifts at this point. The west bank, we have to have protection from end to end.
Absolutely. Well, as a congressman, I imagine that you have a great many things going on at any given time. So what are some other big projects that you want to stop by and let us know about?
Sure. Well, look, I made mention of the infrastructure package, and I want to reiterate that is something that we're working on right now. We're seeing the economy grow 2.4 million jobs, 200,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector alone, $8 trillion in value in the stock market. We're seeing the economy explode in the United States right now. Even 1.4 million people transition off of food stamp programs into the workforce. A lot of really good things. We're going to have two things right now that are going to end up being the choke point in our economy. Number one is going to be workforce, meaning having the people that have the right skills, the right training to take on these new jobs that are becoming available. The second thing is infrastructure. It is roads, it is levees, and we have got to make sure we make progress on that with additional investment and improving the efficiency of our investment, so we'll be spending time on that. Immigration is another hot topic that we're working on right now. We passed a bill on December 21st that takes a lot of the lessons learned from Louisiana from Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, Gustav, Ike, Isaac, the high water in the Mississippi River, even some things we learned from the oil spill. Many of the lessons learned in Louisiana from disasters to where we stop being so reactive and lean forward more, including additional funds, as I've made reference to, for making sure we're protected before a disaster strikes. We have got to stop spending billions after a disaster when we can spend millions before preventing it from happening. And in Hurricane Katrina, on top of it, losing 1,500 lives in a senseless way, we can prevent these things from happening, so we're working on that. And lastly, one of the other big priorities we're working on this year is budget. A lot of times people come up with a lot of great ideas on things to spend money on without ever going back.
We know that.
Without ever going back and revisiting basically the return on investments for some of these programs that we've been spending for decades. And it might have been a great idea in 1975. Is it still a great idea in 2018? And so finding better ways to achieve some of these government objectives, recognizing that some things government is doing is not an inherently government function or something we should not be doing at all. How do we use technology to improve efficiency? And I'll give you a perfect example. We had a bill pass out of committee the other day. If you called us and asked us to help you with an agency, perhaps you were having an issue with Social Security Administration or VA or something like that, you have to print out a form, you have to sign your name on it and mail it to us. We then have to take that and we have to mail it to the agency before we can effectively act on your behalf. We actually have to we have to write a law to change it.
Work order system
Is that not amazing? But we have to write a law, and we just passed a bill out of committee. They'll be moving through the House floor this year that simply allows you to use your phone, just like you can order something on Amazon, or you can even file your taxes electronically, allowing you to allow us to engage on your behalf. And so you're talking about taking a process that today may take a week and turn it into 7 minutes.
That's great.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, really great. Well, it's good to see that government's finally getting up to speed and using technology.
Yeah, well, we're aiming to 1995 technology today, and
aim high.
But look, seriously, there's so many opportunities we have to improve upon the performance of government by using new technologies today. Things like this are incredibly powerful, underutilized in government, and there's no reason why we can't leapfrog government from its antiquated ways into the same way that Amazon and Waze and Google and other things are doing things right now. So.
Yep. Well, look, thanks for coming on.
Hey, you bet. Thank you.
Larry, if you have anything else to add?
Thank you for everything you've
Mr.
done at St. Charles Parish, Garrett, and whatever we can do, let us know.
Hey,
but you've
thank
been
you.
a great, great advocate for St. Charles
Well,
Parish.
I appreciate it.
We'll
Let's
have
just
you
keep
on
making
again.
progress.
Come on once.
Absolutely. Looking forward
All
to
right.
it.
Look for the entire episode at www.scptoday.com or on SCP TV.